Israel is surrounded, but they are holding their ground based on hope, faith, and the word.
Let's follow that out a little bit more, though. What was the rhetoric that Hitler kept telling the British people at the time?
You
guys are one of us. You guys are Germanic people. We should all join together and we'll rule the world. But the British said no. And they rejected that because at that time, this doctrine of we are Israel too, because Israel didn't even exist at the time.
No.
Then World War II ended, and who was it that started Israel as a nation?
Great Britain.
It was England.
Yeah.
And they were like, Israel needs to be back in its homeland.
Yeah.
And so they didn't unite, but they felt that they were part of this whole prophetic thing, that they were part of Israel too, part of the lost tribes, and they were sending part of the nation of Israel back to inhabit the land.
Kingdoms rise and empires crumble, and the knowledge and wisdom of past ages are lost to the foggy ruins of time. But for genuine seekers of truth, one place stands alone on a hill, shining brightly in the darkness. You, dear viewer, have reached the Hidden Citadel.
Hey, welcome to the Hidden Citadel.
You found us.
Yes, you did. Today, Greg, well, actually, last time we left our friend Merlin, or Merlin Wilt, out in the wilderness, all alone, and babbling to himself the 20 years of, and the trees, the 20 years of information that he had stored in his head.
Yes.
The question that we're going to look at today is, well, there's a couple questions. What information was it that he had crammed into his brain? And where did it come from? Just exactly who were the Druids? Where did they come from?
Yeah.
And why was the Roman Church so desperate to take over and subjugate all of the other churches? I think that's going to lead us into the great, great quest that I'm entitling The Quest for Solomon's Lost, I don't know, textbooks, treatises, codexes?
Yeah.
Codices? What are we going to call The Quest for Solomon's Library?
It sounds bad. It sounds like something we should be talking about. Let's not talk about his codices.
His lost library.
Yeah.
The Golden Library of Solomon.
That's right.
How about that? Well, these things need titles like those 1930s. Like those 1930s cereals, the Saturday morning cereals.
That's right.
That's what we need. Some sort of title. It'll come to us. Anyway, okay. I want to talk about something that happened about 30 years before Merlin was sitting in the Scottish wilderness. There was a little known piece of history that happened in 553 AD, which was about 30 years before the big battle that Merlin lost everybody. If you don't know what we're talking about with Merlin, you need to go back and watch the last episode because this one really ties in with it. But suffice it to say, there was a big battle, and everybody, 80,000 people that were connected to Merlin died in this battle. But the big question was really why, and what it came down to was the Roman Church had, and its authority had come up against the Culdee or the Celtic Church, and we're basically saying that you need to be under our authority here. And this, and so we're going to look at the roots of all that. But in 553 AD, the emperor in Constantinople, his name was Justinian, he kidnapped the Pope and dragged him all the way from Rome to Constantinople and held him because he wanted him to excommunicate a group of writers known as the, well, I'll get to those guys in a minute. There was a group of theologians called the Monophysites, and their philosophy was that Jesus was of one nature, and that his divine and human nature were combined into only one nature. The Christian doctrine became the idea that Jesus is fully God and fully man, but two in one. And then there was another group that got played down at the Council of Nicaea, where they believed that Jesus was two complete natures in one flesh. Mm-hmm. And so the Monophysites did not like the idea of the divine and the human nature, fully God and fully man in one flesh. And so they were causing all sorts of trouble for the emperor, causing issues with trade routes and having protests and blocking off ports and things like this. And finally, Justinian was like, look, there are these three theologians that had written books during the original Council of Nicaea to basically condemn the theology of the Monophysites. And these guys said, if you will just condemn those guys as heretics, then we will join in and we'll stop causing all this trouble, and everything can go back to peace. So what happened was he told the Pope, look, you just excommunicate these guys. I've already got the bishop here in Constantinople to agree to this, so you need to agree to it too. And then we'll get these guys off of our backs. So the the Pope at the time, his name was, let me find it, Vasilius, I think.
Vasilius?
No, Vigilius.
Oh.
Vigilius, Pope Vigilius or something like that. Uh-huh. He resisted at first. And they were called the Three Chapters, was the theologians, the Orthodox theologians that had written about this. So Pope Vigilius resisted at first, and Justinian literally had him kidnapped from Rome, dragged to Constantinople, and placed under house arrest until finally the Pope caved, signed the decree, and basically sold out that part of the faith of the entire empire. And basically said, well, that's fine. If we don't want to believe that Jesus was fully God and fully man, that's okay. That's not really that important of a doctrine. So what happened after that, the North African bishops, the Northern Italian bishops, and the Culdee or Celtic elders of Britain were furious, and they gathered together and officially excommunicated the Pope for being a political wimp. And in fact, the North African bishop named Facundus wrote a text that he basically was defending the Three Chapters, and he basically told the Pope, you should have chosen martyrdom rather than cave to Justinian and those other people with their alternate view of everything. Yeah. And so that was a pretty bad thing for the Roman Church. Now, at this time in history, what you had was several different bishops that led the geographical church, the geographical locations of the church. So you had maybe a North African bishop, maybe an Egyptian bishop. You would have had a bishop in the Holy Land, a bishop in Armenia, and a bishop in Constantinople, and then the Pope would have been considered a bishop at the time. The Culdee bishop would have had say, and a lot of times when these councils happen, all of these bishops got together and they discussed, what the doctrines need. If there was a doctrinal question, that's how it got hammered out. Yeah. It wasn't just the way that it kind of is now, where somebody just writes a book and everybody accepts it. or the way it used to be, where the Pope just makes a decree and this is how it was.
Sanctum. Yeah.
The only reason that the Roman Pope had a little bit more authority in the eyes of a lot of people was because it was sort of the center of the Roman Empire for the longest time. But for some reason, the center had shifted to Constantinople, and that's where the seat of the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire was. And I can't remember exactly who it was that moved it there or when it happened, but it was I believe, after the Council of Nicaea. But anyway, what happened was they all excommunicated the Pope, and then the Pope retaliated. And so what happened was they put they came in and took over the African and the North African bishopric. They took over the Egyptian one. They just kind of went through, and one of the last ones was in when they sent Augustine, not Saint Augustine, but Augustine of that was in London to. He went to Britain, and that's where he came and ran into Taliesin. And Taliesin was like, "Yeah, we know Paul and Jesus, but we don't know this character you've invented of the Pope."
Yeah,
and he said, as for the Druids, there's never been a time when the Druids were not Christian, which is crazy to say that, because what you're basically saying is even before Jesus existed, we were preparing ourselves to be Christian.
Which is what the Daniel Magi
exactly
or all the prophecies
all of
say.
that was all about. Yeah,
it's amazing.
And so we got to trace that back then, and we have to say, okay, what are these? Why could he make that statement? You know, he can't just say, "Oh yeah, we've always been a Christian," unless most people would look at that and say, that doesn't really make sense. And why would a bunch of Druids think that they are the keepers of this sacred knowledge and this prophecy of this coming Jesus, the Messiah, unless there was some kind of a connection that connected them all the way back to Israel?
Well, it's almost like you have that, as their name was, so they became. That's what I almost feel like. So it was like, all right, so when they say the Druids have always been, it's almost like as they were Druids, so they were Christians. There could have been, obviously, there could have been all kinds of inhabitants of that area, but they were never Druids as they were Druids, so that Druid name, or that title, that helm that they had, really was the indicator or the evidence of who they were as far as either Magi or, pre-Christian. In the same way that, these guys were Christians. They were labeled like little followers of Christ, or little Christ, whatever, however you want to define the word. But you can't have Christians who were before Christians. They were Christians because they were Christians. You know what I mean?
But we do have a group of people who were followers of a pre-incarnate Christ.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
And so we have a group of people in the world who got dispersed at some point, and they took the prophecies and all this stuff with them. And so basically, when we go to Ireland, and we've talked about this before, and I hope I'm going to pronounce it the right way, the Tuatha De Danann, or Tuatha De Danann, are people of Danu, okay? And so a lot of modern scholars will say, well, Danu is an old goddess of the Irish people, and that's the way that it is. But when we peel back some of that a little bit, there's really no good evidence that Danu was ever a goddess in Ireland.
Yeah.
And so you got to ask yourself, okay, well, who is? Well, number one, let's look at this that just came out, I think, a couple weeks ago.
Wow.
They did a study on the people in Ireland, the oldest inhabitants of Ireland, which tend to be these dark-haired, swarthy kind of people, the people that my son-in-law's family descend from.
Nice.
These were called the Tuatha, or the descendants of them, that were eventually replaced by other people groups that came in.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do the genetic testings, they find out that these people actually came from the Iberian coast. All right, so they moved there to Ireland from what was in the Bible times called Tarshish.
Here we go.
Okay.
Let's go.
And so, who do we know that traded in Tarshish? You know, this was one of their main stops that they went to. It would be the Phoenicians, right?
Yes. Yep.
So now we're talking about a group of people who say they are the people of Dan, who are connected somehow to the port city of Tarshish. And where do we know that the port city connects to? We connect it to Jonah.
Yes,
because
we do.
where was Jonah going to? Jonah decided he was going to flee and not deliver the message to Nineveh.
Nope.
So he said, I'm going to go to Tarshish. Now, I've heard pastors preach this, and they're like, well, Tarshish was the farthest known point in the world. Well, we know that's not true.
Yeah.
Because they knew about the the tin mines up in Britain at the time.
They did.
And so Tarshish was just a stop on the way to get to other people who were originally from Israel.
It's like Nashville.
Okay.
Yeah.
It really is.
Just kinda
Yeah.
come from Texas on the way
That's
to Maine.
it. Go to Maine. That's it. You got to stop in Nashville.
Nashville.
So anyway, we've got there's one other connection though there's a lot of connections, but I'm gonna give you a couple of them. The tribe of Dan literally means judge in Hebrew.
Yes, it does.
Okay. And in Genesis 49:16, it says, Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Mm-hmm. And when they landed in Ireland or Wales, the first thing that was established by the Tuatha that got there were these laws called the Brehon laws, which are a decentralized, highly sophisticated legal system that's based entirely on financial restitution and elder courts that almost perfectly mirrors the way everything's worked during the biblical judges period.
Mm.
And it's like,
Brehon?
Nobody else had a system like that in that time period. So why is it that you see a legal system set up in Ireland that completely mirrors the legal system that's going on in Judges?
Yes.
You know?
Among other things. I mean, we even did it.
Yes.
We did an entire episode on Ireland and talked about
there were so many things that were, and you can go check that out at our archive channel if you want to see the Ireland episodes. But one of the things we talked about in that episode was the fact that tartan came from the Levant, right around the area, and it's massive. And tartan, the thing is, like, a person may say, so you're telling me that kilts that all the Highlanders wear, and that the original Irish people wore too, you're telling me that those actually came from the Middle East, from around the area of Jerusalem. What's the big deal? I mean, couldn't anybody have come up with tartan fabric? Well, the thing is, tartan is not just a fabric, it's a technology.
Yes, it is.
And you have to know how to weave those types of colors and that checker pattern and everything. It's not just something that you just naturally come up with and say, oh, I think I'm going to do this one day. It's an intricate thing that goes all the way back to, a lot of people think, Joseph's coat of many colors. That perhaps his coat was a tartan kind of pattern. Okay?
That's really cool.
And so now we've got that connection connecting us up there too. But so in 722 BC, when the Assyrians captured the northern kingdom, everybody got sent off and deported. Some of them didn't just go into slavery.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them fled the area and left, and especially the tribe of Dan. And we know that the tribe of Dan was connected to the shipping routes based on the Bible, because in Judges, Deborah calls a meeting of all of the people, and she says the tribe of Dan remained in their ships and they didn't show up at the meeting, and it made her angry that they didn't show up. And so we know that they were connected with the shipping all the way back to before David and Solomon even lived. Dan was involved in shipping all over the world.
Dan also, there's something about, remember it was, the basket that Moses was in was pitched within and without, I think, right? And certainly the ark of that Noah's ark was pitched in and without. It seems like that when there's a special possession, when there's a special message, when there's a special person or special people, that they have an unusual protection around them. And if you look at the tribe of Dan, first of all, they're considered to be almost insulated from conflict, and they can exist almost like Switzerland in between conflict and not be harmed. They have
not only were they, I think it's more to it than that.
Yeah.
Because who else was from the tribe of Dan? Samson.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And so I think there was probably this, and we find the Samson legend over and over. We see him repeated in Hercules and Heracles. And even in Ireland, we have Cuchulainn, which was this monstrously strong judge that matches the Samson, and he was like a king, a judge king, and he had monstrous strength, and these tales were all over the Irish, area.
So that's it. So okay, so that almost sounds like the Ark in a way, because
maybe,
the Ark had two features to it as far as its response, its supernatural response. For one, it supernaturally defended the people, so it caused tumors and rats and take down gods, right? But it also blessed. So it had two functions. So it's almost like Dan is both insulated from others, but then blessed from within, in the same way the Ark was. Yeah.
And think about this. Okay, if Dan is the tribe of judgment, okay, and they are judges, then that means they must really know
I know
law.
Where you're going. Nice. I didn't see you doing this.
Okay.
Let's go.
So if they know the law and they know that they've angered God, then of all the tribes that went away from God, who would be the one that would be the most likely to come back in penitence? It would be the ones that knew the law.
That knew the Lord. Yeah. Knew the law.
And they were like, okay. But here's the other thing, too. In Ireland, or in Wales, you have this hero called Hu Gadarn, and he was a guy that led his people across misty seas in an ox-drawn cart and pulled them out of a cosmic flood. And what I find interesting about this Hu Gadarn guy, or Gadarn, Hu Gadarn, is you see elements of Noah's flood in his story, but you also see elements of Moses parting the water and bringing the people out in his story too. So it's like if people, over time as the story drifted, you could see, a story could develop that would have elements of Noah and elements of Moses in the same story. But also, what text of all of the flood stories around the world, there's only one flood story that you literally could use it as a blueprint to build a boat from. And that's the story of Noah. And who was the ones that kept the stories would have been the same people that would have kept the legal system, because a lot of times the laws and the stories went hand in hand.
They were part of all the history. I mean, you had to...
And when... Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, anytime...
Run with it.
Whenever there's usually a time of repentance, but especially in the Old Testament, they review everything that God has done from the time of the Exodus up until that point. And
Yep.
it's to show the justice, to show the unfailing love, but to also show the power and the might, and the omniscience, and it show who we are, why we are, and what we are all the way through.
Yes.
And they go hand in the history and the law go hand in hand. Then I mean, really, the history of the law, when you have the Ten Commandments, that's both history and law, both of those things.
Yep. Well, it is, and so Dan. One of the things that we know from our study of Daniel, and anybody that wants to, they can go check out the 3 episodes about Daniel that are on the archive channel. And it's also in my book, Sacred Fire, so you can check that out too on Amazon. But one of the things that we learned was that Daniel was... he seems like the idea of memorization was really, really important because they had a lot of the prophecies and he was able to do it. And then whenever you go and look at these great white robe Brotherhood collectives, wherever they popped up, you will see memorization was a massive part of it. The Essenes were all about memorizing. All of the education system that was inherent in Ireland and Wales and England was all based around this 20-year system of memorizing the entire knowledge base that they had. And you had two ways that you could go. You could go to become a druid, or you could go and become a bard. And a bard was the one that they kept the political history, and the druids seemed to keep more of the natural kind of history that was important to the people. If you want to, there are lots of resources out there where you can read about this stuff, but basically this is kind of connected to the England is Israel historical thinking that a lot of people like William Blake subscribe to this. And there's a lot of modern scholars that try to debunk this, but what's funny is the more DNA that gets analyzed, the harder it is for this theory to actually be debunked, And so when I want to go back to Jonah for just a minute.
Well, let me say one thing there.
Go ahead.
It's so interesting. When you just said that, you think one thing about Great Britain that's so interesting, especially like with World War II, okay? Well, everything else around it was falling all around England, that it held its ground as this lone little people, despite all that was against it around it and beating it down. And really, what was the thing that really galvanized the British people to stand firm, stand their ground, and hold where they are and not lose what happened? And there's 2 things. There's hope and there's faith. But even there's one more thing, and that is the word. Because what Churchill did more than anything was inspire them with words. And we will fight them in the air, in the ground, on the beach. And if the more you say that, it's called anaphora in old rhetoric. But if you're using anaphora and you are speaking to these people, you're saying wherever you are, there's still hope as long as there is breath, as long as there is inspiration. And he's taking now. Where else does that exist? Well, right now, that's Israel. Israel is surrounded, but they are holding the ground based on hope, faith, and the word.
Let's follow that out a little bit more, though. What was the rhetoric that Hitler kept telling the British people at the time?
You
guys are one of us. You guys are Germanic people. We should all join together and we'll rule the world. But the British said no. And they rejected that because at that time, this doctrine of we are Israel too, because Israel didn't even exist at the time.
No.
Then World War II ended, and who was it that started Israel as a nation?
Great Britain.
It was England.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, Israel needs to be back in its homeland.
Yeah.
And so they didn't unite, but they felt that they were part of this whole prophetic thing, that they were part of Israel too, part of the lost tribes, and they were sending part of the nation of Israel back to inhabit the land. And so there's an old hymn called Jerusalem, and it's was written by William Blake, and the whole thing is, did Jesus come to this fair land and stand on these rocky shores? And it's like, well, the answer to the question is, yeah, he probably did, because Joseph of Arimathea was his uncle and owned all these tin mines up here. And it just makes sense that Jesus would have gone with him, because where did Joseph of Arimathea go? He took Mary and Martha and Mary and Lazarus and met Philip in Marseille. And then they all went up to Glastonbury and planted a church. And this is not just things that people have said. This is documented history, that when Rome came to try to take over England 3 or 4 different times, they said, look, here's the history. We have a legitimate claim to be here that goes all the way back to Joseph of Arimathea. And you don't have... Hang on. I thought I turned my phone off, but... you don't have a right to come in here and say that we aren't allowed to inhabit this land, And so, basically, all that being said, I want to jump backwards in time to Jonah's story for just a minute. Jonah got on the boat. And a lot of times people are like, well, they were a bunch of pagans on the boat because they were worshiping all their other gods. Well, what we know about the seafarers at the time is that the seafarers were Phoenicians, all right? And we've kind of established in other episodes that, especially I think in the King Solomon episode, that Dan and the Phoenicians are like intricately linked. And you kind of can't separate them.
Right.
Even the Phoenician alphabet that they spread all over the world is very, very closely related to Proto-Hebrew. And so it's like when you look at a lot of the letters that are in Proto-Hebrew, and then you look at them in Phoenician, they're virtually identical. And then they take that alphabet and they go all over the world, and it became part of the Greek alphabet and then the Roman alphabet, and that's where writing pretty much stems from. And so you've got the Phoenicians taking Jonah by whale, Jonah by boat to get away from God. And then when Jonah speaks up and he says, yeah, this is my fault, I'm a prophet of God and I'm running away from him,
throw me over.
Any normal pagan would be like, well, who cares? Why is your God so much better than our gods?
Yeah.
We're going to keep but immediately they were struck with fear. And they were like, oh no, you are a prophet of Yahweh. Well, no wonder us praying to these other gods isn't working, and you've angered him. What do we got to do to make it, to get square with Yahweh again? And he's like, just throw me into the sea. Because he still doesn't want to go, right?
Yeah.
So they throw him into the ocean, and what blows me away that I've never really studied before until I really got to thinking about this is he went to Nineveh, all right? And Nineveh is way up north on the shores of the Euphrates River, okay? They had a god, and I believe it was Marduk, but I could be wrong, but it was a fish god, okay? And the fish god, the story was he came out of the water out of a fish's mouth and then told them stuff, and then they were supposed to follow him.
That's funny.
So when this big fish, for 3 days, it's swimming, and it must have found either underground passages that won't go underneath the Middle East, and come up in the Euphrates, or he came all the way around, maybe somehow in an underground passage that let him cross from what's now the Strait of what's the one in Egypt that they built in the 70s or the 60s?
Not bearing.
Anyway, you know what I'm talking about.
No, not Magellan.
There could have been an underground passageway through there, and then he came all the way down and then up through the Euphrates, all the way up to Nineveh, where out pops Jonah looking just like the god Marduk, and he's come to tell the people to repent, and everybody in Nineveh immediately repents and says, oh man, we've angered Yahweh, we need to... Again, why would they care?
Right, unless they were truly knowledgeable
of
fearful.
What was going on.
Right.
And so that's kind of a little side jaunt to this, but it gets us a little bit closer back in... Yeah, it gets us a little bit closer back in time to what I'm calling the Lost Archives of Solomon.
All right.
Okay?
Yes.
So in 1 Kings 4:33, we read that Solomon asked for wisdom, and he was given a lot of wisdom by God.
Yes.
And then it said that in 1 Kings 4:33, we see that he was like the absolute master of natural science. Okay? So the Bible says he wrote definitive works. Now, it's saying that these works are definitive. These are the final arbiter of where you go to if you want to find out information about these topics. Botany, zoology, trees, birds, and hidden medicines.
Yeah. Ooh.
Now, when you open your Bible, I want to know what book those books are contained in.
Yeah, but isn't there?
They're not there.
Doesn't it end with the rest of his works? Are they not written in the Book of Solomon? Like, is there something like that?
I think there may be. I'm not sure. I know that there's lots of these.
Yeah.
You know, the chronicles of this king or that king or whatever.
But you know what's crazy is, like, you know, and I remember I was listening to a little bit of this about what the kind of the chronicles of Solomon would be, but you know, he's talking about just how pervasive wisdom has to be from creation throughout, and that every single major character in the Bible and the success of anybody had to do with wisdom. Now, what's interesting here is that the definitive works are what exists already, and that he is naming and finding. It's almost like the way Adam was, naming and understanding, you know, and right. But what he's not doing, I mean, with medicine, medicine you can. I mean with hidden whatever, but they still already exist. It's not like someone, like, he is teaching other people how to make fire, how to make that sort of thing. So it's interesting that it's almost like a mockery of the Watchers in a way. That
it really is.
Solomon is a mockery, almost like to say, all right, you know, you Watchers, you're creating chaos, and I'm going to create order with my own promise of Messiah.
Yes.
And this is the first step toward that order. And he's going to have the knowledge of everything having to do with life.
Yep. Well, and think about this. The Watchers obviously had information that they were giving people that came with a price. God is saying, here, I'm going to give you all this information that's going to be free. And then when you look at the books of Solomon, these medieval ones that some people argue they probably do actually date back to Solomon's time, where Solomon enslaved a lot of these Watcher spirits, you know, that had become demons, the spirits of the Nephilim, and he used them to get a lot of the information that he was looking for. It kind of makes me think, well, maybe there could be some... I don't understand why God would allow him to work with these creatures, but in the end it does kind of make sense. Okay, if he was working and getting his information from these creatures by forcing them to give the information up, then all of that time period of being around them would have taken its toll.
Yeah.
And they probably eventually were like, the only way we're going to get free of this guy is if we lead him into sin somehow. And so that was kind of their way of getting him to fall away from God, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, it kind of ties the whole story together.
It sure does.
But the question that we got to ask ourselves is, where are these textbooks?
Oh, I thought you were going to say something else.
No, not that one yet. We're getting there. By the way, folks, if you love us, go to redbubble.com and buy a t-shirt. I've got new t-shirts that just came out that are up on the site. You can get one like my Hidden Citadel shirt that I'm wearing today, or you can go buy our books at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or wherever books are sold. My new book, Sacred Fire's out.
Boom.
We got the Parafables, and we got the Encyclopedia of Weird Crap, which isn't necessarily Solomon's textbook, but it's still a lot of cool information. Then you can go check out our bands, the Fantastic Flying Frogs and the Brothers Graham. But back to the textbooks of Solomon.
Yes.
All right. Not only does the Bible tell us that those books existed, but Josephus confirmed that he wrote massive volumes that had hidden medicinal virtues of plants and cosmic cycles, okay? So check this out. If Solomon wrote the definitive books on spiritual and physical properties of flora, from the cedar trees of Lebanon to the hyssop, which I'm pretty sure is what the Bible says, look at how the Druids encoded their highest secrets.
Yeah.
They didn't write things down. They memorized stuff, but they did create something called Ogham, which is known also as the tree alphabet.
The first writings.
The first. Yeah. So each letter.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's all over, carved in
Ireland.
rocks and everywhere. Yeah, I saw it too. So each letter in Ogham is named after a specific tree or plant.
Yeah.
The birch, the alder, the willow, the oak. It's an advanced classification system where this esoteric knowledge is literally bound to the taxonomy of nature. Isn't that cool?
And one of the things that I think is so fascinating about Ogham is that, first of all, it's one of the earliest written languages there is, right? But people put it on there as a boundary to their land.
Yeah.
Now, in order to know that this boundary means anything, you have to be literate in what's on the. So it is almost a perpetual. There's something called modus tollens, and it's if A is true, if B is true, A is true. If A is false, B is right. But you're working backwards. That B is true. That this boundary line and this warning that's on this is our land is on there. That means A is true. That people are knowledgeable and literate. In this language in order for them to read it. So it's like
exactly. And the funny thing is like, if you go to Wikipedia or any of the modern scholars, they're going to say, oh, Ogham, it's actually came around in the Middle Ages. No. And it's like, it's not true at all. And when you go to Ireland and you start asking the scholars over there, they're going to tell you, oh no, this goes we don't even know how far back this goes.
I mean, you look at like just some of the features and the structures and the works of the people of Ireland and the ancient people of Ireland that like the New Grange is at the same as the same time frame there was as the Pyramid of Giza. So that's not the Middle Ages.
It's not. And the funny thing too is I was at this hill fort in Northern Ireland. I can't remember, or maybe it was in Donegal. But it's on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, the locals, I was like, "How old is this?" And they're like, "It's 6,000 years old." And I'm like, "I'm standing in this thing that's 6,000 years old." So when I got home, I was like, "Oh yeah, I want to learn about that place."
Yeah.
So I looked it up on Wikipedia, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it was made in the Middle Ages." And I'm like, you can't trust what Wikipedia says about
some
just about
12-year-old in his
anything.
mom's basement just threw that in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like you just got to be careful.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this stuff, when you go to look up stuff on search engines, who do they get from? They grab their information from Wikipedia. So you just got to double check everything when you're looking into this stuff. And that's why a lot of what we're talking about, the England as Israel thing, they're going to poo-poo that idea. They're going to poo-poo Ogham as being old. They're going to poo-poo the idea of these books of Solomon being old. And so it's like you kind of just have to double check and then use logic, to reason through this stuff, because some of the stuff, it's not, it is not logical the way that some of the academics, some of the ideas that they come up with. And the other thing about academia is you got to follow the money, because somebody is getting paid,
Sure,
and they've got their own pet project that they're trying to get money for.
Yep.
And so a lot of times there's some and I'm not saying all scholars are, but there are a lot of scholars that are unscrupulous, and they're out there, they'll say anything as long as it means they can keep funding whatever project they're working on.
Yep.
So it's like, you just got to be careful and read everything and look into it. So there's another thing. So I'm proposing that a lot of Solomon's missing information was probably preserved by the Druids.
Yes.
And when you get to Merlin, and we're going to bring this all the way back around, now we've got Merlin out in the wilderness. He's one of only maybe 2 or 3 remaining Druids that still have all of this information in his head, and he's gone nuts because he's, basically seen this horrible battle where 80,000 of his people got killed.
Yeah.
And he's dealing with severe PTSD and trauma, and he's probably in a fugue state, and he's just out there talking to the apple trees. But when he writes down his prophecies, he's coding his prophecies with the same kind of terminology and the same kind of wording that you would expect to find not in Irish, pasture dwellers, but in the wording of people who were familiar with the Levant.
Yep.
Which there's no reason that he should have been if he was just some pagan druid worshiping trees
from Europe
out there. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So there is one other place that I think could possibly hold the key to these hidden treasures. So I think the tribe of Dan probably preserved a lot of this information, but again, it's been wiped out because the Druids don't exist anymore. And then I think that when they opened the Qumran scrolls and they found the copper scroll, which is known as 3Q15, the copper scroll is not a book of the Bible or anything like that.
No.
It's a list of all of the treasures and the hidden important documents and stuff that was part of the Jewish temple complex right before Rome sacked it in AD 72.
Yep.
And so the copper scroll got sent to the Qumran community. The Qumran community hid all of their important documents. And so I'm thinking that there's 2 places that we might find Solomon's information. There are still scrolls that were damaged that we've never been able to unwrap that are part of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I have a feeling that that's one potential place we could find it. The other potential place is if all of these books existed, wherever they find these hidden treasures that are mentioned in the Copper Scrolls, it's possible they might find these books
where they are. Yeah, right.
of Solomon, and I think that's where they are. And so what we're going to do, just to give you a little precursor for next time, is we're going to take all of this information and we're going to connect Merlin to Stonehenge. So next week, we're going to get into Stonehenge, Monmouth, the different, what was it, the Karnak stones, or not Karnak, the
Sar-
Saracen
Saracen
stones.
stones, yeah.
Saracen stones.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about all of that next time and how those stones being there might be just another little point showing that the tribe of Dan would have known what they were and all that stuff. I don't know. What do you think, Greg?
I think
What is your
here's what
take on
I'm also
everything
thinking,
we've talked about?
I'm also thinking that when you're talking about Merlin, and you're talking about the knowledge of things and being out. There's something about being. I'm listening today about the way that sometimes God mocks those of the flesh, and he
Mm-hmm.
mocks them in such a way that, like, as Egypt was priding itself on being whatever its power, holding Israel,
Yes.
or holding the Israelites, that when he took them out of there, he fed them with the food of angels. Like, manna
Mm-hmm.
was from heaven, it says,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. And gave them winged things, which was the
Mm-hmm.
meat.
The
So
quails.
the
Yeah.
wisdom here is, uh, I'm using what is considered desolate by the flesh and by the carnal mind, and I'm using heaven to
Mm-hmm.
make it right. So what just happened there? There was greater wisdom and knowledge being almost in a Henry David Thoreau, being out there in
Mm-hmm.
among God's creation with full knowledge and everything. But someone else, it was kind of a Merlin type. John the Baptist.
Oh,
Out
that's true.
He was very much a Merlin type. He was very much
Yep.
like a druid. He was out. He was,
Yeah.
he was, what was his, he was eating
It
locusts,
was
and he had
camel skin
camel
and
skin, and he was just out. But was he wise? Yes.
oh yeah.
All right. So, in his prophecy, what does prophecy mean? Truth. What else is truth? Fact. What else is fact? Law. What else is law? History. He had it
Yep.
all. When he
All of
appeared,
it.
he was given that full knowledge, not because he was among
Yes.
the academics, but because he's out with God, being
Exactly.
having the experience of everything out there, of
Yep.
understanding nature. You're not going to survive if you don't know that you can eat locusts. You're not going to survive if you know that camel hair is going to protect
Yep.
you. And it's just such an interesting thing that he could be a type of
Well,
Merlin.
who was the poet? I don't think it was Rex Roth. But there was a poet that lived somewhere, and he's in near the mountains. I thought it was here in North Carolina,
Mhm.
but he said that I'm going to church now, and he walked off into the mountains. Was is kind of the quote. I see it on bumper
Oh,
stickers around here,
yeah.
and it's like that's the truth. It's like when you get out there in nature and you spend time looking at God's beauty and
Hmm.
goodness, you can't help but walk away with a reverence and an awe, you
Yeah.
know?
If not a knowledge. I mean, that it
Yeah,
really goes back.
you're going to learn a
Solomon.
lot of knowledge too.
What's interesting is when it says Solomon knew everything. What was listed is God's creation, not man's
Yes.
creation. Not like the side of a building, or the
No.
intricate
And that's the
jewelry.
funny thing too. Solomon hired somebody to come in to design the temple.
Yep.
The wisdom that he
Yeah.
had, he didn't sit there and say, "Oh, I'm
Yeah.
going to lay all this out." I'm sure he had something to do with it
Yeah.
because he would have understood mathematics too as part of the
Sure.
whole thing in geometry,
But he
but
brought
it's
in
like but
Bezalel
he
and
brought in
Oliahab, right?
yeah, right. So they were the ones laying the whole thing out, and it's just one of those things that the kind of wisdom that he had
Hmm.
was almost the type that he could look at something and say, "Oh, I understand how that thing operates in the world
Yep.
and what its part is in the whole chain of life and everything like that. It was a deeper kind of knowledge that he could get from observing things that is really similar in a lot of ways to the way that the Druids' knowledge was.
Yeah.
So, what are we going to call a hidden wisdom pedal? Or what are we going to... What does a hidden... Yeah, what does that pedal do?
Oh, yeah.
Kind of hidden wisdom comes out of a pedal like that.
Yeah, Hakmata Star, right? Isn't that what that in
I think
Hebrew?
That would be a good one. He could just put the Hebrew on the front of it, and that'd be it.
That's right. Come on, Josh Scott.
So you can do it.
So hidden wisdom has to. It has to be something that as you're pressing it, it can't become more distorted. It has to become more clear.
No, it's got to be more clear,
crystalline, shimmery. It has to improve the tone. It almost has to take all the outliers. It almost like so it has to kind of be a compression pedal of sorts, like a compression
and EQ
and then of course reverb.
Yeah, right. So I think what it does, you click the pedal.
Yeah.
It's a stereo pedal.
Yep.
It immediately widens your signal.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if maybe what it does is like it divides it so that it's kind of like a doubling effect, like you get when you sing over the microphone twice.
Yeah.
The same part.
Yeah, that's a
chorus. But it is something
kind of
like that. It gets a spatial. There's a spatial thing to it.
Yep.
It compresses it, cleans it up.
Yep.
And then bumps the mids a little bit so that it's a little warmer.
Yeah.
And then it sounds like it's in sort of the choir of heaven.
Yeah.
So it's like
so it clarifies.
Really clean, beautiful reverb.
Hakmata brings truth. It's funny. I think in Ecclesiastes that one word, it's only once. It's written grace, and it's HN Hakmata, which means hidden wisdom.
Yeah, I love it. That's it.
Let's go.
All right, people. You have been watching the Hidden Citadel. Hey, if you like us, please tell your friends, because we are a small fledgling channel that we only have 100 episodes out. But most of them are on our old channel that wasn't going anywhere. So we're trying to go somewhere. Tell your friends. We need your help.
That's right.
We're not too proud to beg.
No.
All right.
Yes.
So tell everybody, and I don't know, kid. Is there anything else that they need to know? We've told them about. Oh, we didn't tell you about Facebook. We have a Facebook page, the Hidden Citadel, that you can go and you will get updates and information on when videos are out. Mm-hmm. I found out that when you upload a YouTube video, if you upload it early enough, YouTube goes through and analyzes your video and everything. And so the reason we were putting videos out at 4:30 on Wednesdays was so that it would give the algorithm enough time to analyze our video.
Yep.
So that way people could watch it later.
Yeah.
But what I found out was that because we tend to upload our videos at least a week in advance, we don't need to go through that step. So we're better off to release our videos in the evening when everybody gets off work. So that way they can all get together and we can have like a watch party. And then that tells the algorithm, hey, everybody's on watching the videos. So I'm changing the time slot from Wednesdays at 4:30 to Wednesdays at 7. So if you want to jump on and watch the Hidden Citadel Wednesdays at 7, we will be releasing them from now on at that time period to see if that works a little bit better with the algorithm getting our information out there to you and to other people that like this kind of stuff. So that's pretty much all I've got to say, I think.
Except for one thing.
And my brain's not working. Stay in the Citadel. What? Stay in the Citadel because
night is coming. The
watchmen advise, morning is coming, but night will soon return.